Yeah, first of all, I'm really glad to be here, and thanks a lot for the opportunity to kind of throw my perspective into the discussion. I would love to give an idea or give you my opinion on what are actually, I would say, some key ingredients, or I can also say some of the key challenges we observe when we are working with clients, but also we observe for ourselves in this transformation to software-defined vehicles, which in my opinion, and I think probably you share this because you're here today, which is the most exciting development since, I don't know, Werther Benz drove from Mannheim to Pforzheim more than 120 years ago. But before I go into the content, I would like to give you at least a glimpse of what we are doing so that you understand the context I'm coming from. So I'm responsible within T-Systems for a business department which is called Connected Mobility. And what we basically do is we build and we operate connected vehicle platforms. So that's in a nutshell what we are doing. And as you can see here, we are doing this since quite some time. So we started something around 10, 12 years ago with this business. And we have, I would say, a significant operation in this space right now, and also a significant experience. And also we made some significant learnings on the way, sometimes very painful learnings, to be honest. But today we have around 25 million vehicles worldwide under operation in more than 200 markets. So I would say we kind of somehow understand this market. And that's also where we come from. And we started as a project company, or as a project, with a project business. And some of the things we started 4 years ago is we decided that we want to, let's say, transfer this experience into a kind of product approach. And that's why I thought it's hopefully meaningful for you if I share with you some of the experience we made along that way. Because, I mean, Software Factory, and one of the key points we want to discuss is today, what does it mean in building software in a kind of factory-based model for software-defined vehicles. That's how I understood our title for today, and I think we have something we can share with you. So I don't want to go into the details. I think the key message is that we went or made this decision to say, okay, we don't want to stay with project business for several reasons, but that we said we try to bake this experience into a suite of modules which we can use in order to be faster and more competitive in building customer-specific solutions in the area of connected IoT platforms. Okay, that should be enough. I was honestly thinking to skip this because, I mean, you all know, software-defined vehicle is a very hot topic. Everybody's discussing how software is actually transforming our industry. What excites me personally around software-defined vehicle is that I really believe, and this was mentioned already from some of the speakers before, that this has the power to really change, I would say, 3 major pillars of the industry's business model. Software is actually redefining the product, or gives us the opportunity to redefine and adjust the product along the life cycle. It helps us, or it gives us the power to refine and define new revenue models. We heard about this just some minutes ago. And obviously, it also changes the way how we interact with users or clients. So, and for me, these are 3 things which are extremely powerful. So, and that's why I believe this is the most exciting field you could actually spend your time in the industry. And if we look on where we stand, I mean, you all know this, of course, software is already, I would say, an essential part of in every domain of a vehicle. I mean, we have software obviously defining, for example, services in the connected service and infotainment space. We have embedded software, which is enriching functions in body and chassis, for example. in assisted driving functions. And of course, software is also, I would say, the foundation for everything around automated driving functions. But what we also see is that in each of this domain, traditionally, we have our own methods and we have our own tools to develop the software and to maintain the software along its life cycle. And what we observe, and we have OEMs, of course, here in the room, so hopefully you can confirm, is that we see that car manufacturers are currently trying to develop a consistent software perspective across all clusters or across all domains. And in order to do this, and this is probably not a complete list, but we see that there are basically 4 strategic initiatives most of our clients are currently undertaking. The first one, it was mentioned already several times, and it's the basis for everything, is the idea to decouple hardware from software. The second one is, and we see this, that we see initiatives, I would say, in most of our clients, that they set up initiatives to develop a consistent, across all domains, a consistent software lifecycle management. The third one is about automation, so implementing a CI/CD pipeline and also a data loop to get the data from the field or from the field back into the back end to support data-driven development. And last but not least, this has also an organization aspect. So we see all our clients working on how to implement service-oriented organizations and DevOps. So these are, in our opinion, 4 relevant and important initiatives. And what I would like to do is I would like to pick four aspects we found which are essential and which we, for example, also, and some of our clients as well, are struggling with in order to implement these initiatives. So I don't have 10 points like Ole, I only have 4. And these are the 4 things I would like to kind of shortly or briefly present, and hopefully this will enrich our discussion during the day. The first one is product focus, and I will explain each. I will go through each of the items in a minute. The second one is swift in managing or focusing more on the output than on the input. I think Ole was mentioned this also in one of his points, that we tend to throw additional people on the same problem and hope that this actually solves the problem. And I think it's probably sometimes even counterproductive. The third one is focus on operations. So here, enable the ops and DevOps, because I think we all talk about DevOps, but in most cases we only focus on the dev, not on the ops. And last but not least, it's what we call build, buy, and compose, the question of what is the right make or buy strategy in order to solve these issues. But let me start with the product focus. And there, it's very, very simple. I think one thing we all need to do, and this is something where I can say we in T-Systems are actually struggling with every day, is to actually move away from a project orientation towards a product orientation. What I mean is we all, and I think this is true for probably most in our community, we come from a project background. So we are used to basically develop software based on a fixed specification in a certain time frame. And what we all realize is that actually these specifications are not fixed anymore. So the question is, how can we actually move into a model which allows us to think not in fixed feature list, but think in terms of versions and roadmaps, so that we accept the fact that requirements actually will develop and change over time, and that this, of course, then also our specification of our product will change over time, so that we think of longer-term roadmaps, which has, in my opinion, 2 implications, probably more, but two which I think are important. The one thing is product orientation, in my understanding, comes then also with empowerment of the DevOps and product teams, which honestly in our organizations, I would say, is a very difficult issue to achieve. So you have to make sure that you really give the responsibility for this product and also for the roadmap on how this product will evolve over time, that you enable the product teams, the DevOps teams, as a product owner to make these decisions, which is something which I would say traditionally is very tough for us because we are more used to something like a more hierarchical approach. And the second thing is, and I think Ole touched on this already, for me is the question, what does it mean in terms of how to collaborate with partners? In the auto industry, we are working in a very complex ecosystem, and you have different ways how you actually interact with partners. And this is, I mean, very simple here, but obviously you can partner, you can actually source things in a kind of managed service, or you decide you do everything yourself. These are, very briefly, the three options we have. And if you look on partner, I mean, partner in the terms of software development obviously gives you some great benefit in terms of time to market and scalability. I mean, we all are facing the same challenge that we don't find the talents we need in order to do the job. So partnering is obviously something which helps us to scale faster and to develop our software in a shorter time. But probably partnering makes it more difficult, I would not say impossible, but makes it more difficult actually to develop and maintain a common vision of this product. And you need to have a common understanding of what the product is about across all parties who are involved in the product development and the product management. And if you have a lot of partners involved, this obviously becomes more difficult, right? You have to make sure you develop this common vision and you maintain this vision along the time, which is difficult if you have a heterogeneous group. If we look on fully managed services, for example, we offer the products I have shown in the beginning, we offer this also as a managed service so that you basically can use this as a standard platform, which is great if you start for smaller companies, for example, but obviously is very inflexible. So for a bigger OEM who always has specific requirements, it's probably not the right way to source. And then last but not least, you obviously have also the opportunity or the possibility to decide, okay, I do everything myself. I have a dedicated team, which can be own people, which can be people from third parties, but where you basically say, buy the people, the resource, and you manage them as one dedicated own team, so to say, which obviously gives you a benefit in how to really implement this common vision, right? But has clear limitations in terms of scale, and we all know this because we are all hunting for the same talents right now. And for me, the key message is here that we need to think about how we want to source or how we want to partner, that we have to make this decision, this make or buy decision, right in the beginning when we decide about how we define the products. And this is something which I think currently does not happen. At least I can't see it. I don't see that our partners, our clients, have a clear make or buy strategy in this field. Currently, the main observation is that most of our clients are actually going the last way, the do-it-yourself way, buying capacity, which, in my opinion, sometimes makes makes it so complex that they're actually not or struggling in managing this complexity. So, having this really educated decision on what is the right strategy for sourcing, for me, is an essential topic to succeed. The second topic I would like to briefly touch is, we called it here the army of people. Probably not really good expression nowadays, I must say, but what I wanted to say here is, I mean, as we said, it was mentioned already several times today, we all are hunting for talents which are very rare in the market, and it's not only about the quantity, it's more about the quality of these talents we need to attract. And I think we have two issues to solve. One is the capacity issue, if you want to call it like this. I mean, I think most of us, now I would say all of us, all of our companies are investing heavily in reskilling, in upskilling programs, which is absolutely necessary. So for example, in T-Systems, I must say, has been already, I would say, almost a 180-degree change if I look on training. I mean, what we invested in training and what we offer now to all employees to kind of get new orientation and really do something like choose a different career path, like, for example, giving everybody the opportunity to go into software development and things like this. This was not there 2 years ago. So there's a tremendous shift. But still, I believe, besides reskilling and upskilling initiatives, which are good, this is not enough. We need also to think about how can we actually control our input, so the resources which we have to invest in order to build an output in a different way, which means we need to think about how can we leverage standards and products and building blocks across different vehicles, regions, models, I would say even OEMs, which I believe is something which we currently don't use. So thinking about how can we make reuse of investments has been already taken, I think is a very important topic. And the second topic is not a capacity problem, I would say it's a productivity problem. And I think Serene will definitely, I mean, you will probably talk about this a little bit in the afternoon. But I think there is a study from McKinsey, I think from beginning of this year, which showed how the gap between complexity of in-car software and the productivity in the development process, how this gap is actually widening right now. So our problem currently does not become smaller, it becomes bigger. And the question is now how to increase productivity, which means how to decide what to produce, how to produce it, but also then, and I think that's what my understanding is, what is the mission of Serene, to make sure I have the right tools available to actually measure productivity in order to improve it. Right? The third one I would like to touch on is the operations part. As I mentioned, at least that's what we observe, there's a lot of focus on development, but less focus on operations. And if we look on software-defined vehicles and services and connected vehicles, I mean, this is something which is absolutely essential. The first one is we are talking about globally distributed fleets, and we are talking about very heterogeneous fleets in terms of model years and variants and things like this. So we have to make sure that everything we build actually can be operated, I would say, everywhere. So across different onboard systems, but also across different back-end infrastructures, we have to make sure that we actually consider that we have different regional regulations. Like, for example, if we think about China as just an example, we have to make sure the software we build actually can be operated in different regions, on different infrastructures, on different technology stacks. This is one aspect. And the other aspect is scalability, because in automotive or in connected car, we are talking about tens of millions of vehicles or devices we have to manage and we have to deploy the software on. So having this into account and knowing about the specific issues of managing a connected fleet, where you have moving assets, as I said, in 200, 300 countries, or more than 200 countries, is an important aspect you need also to consider when you build the software. And last but not least, I think automation is also something, if we think we have, besides the development process, when we develop software, it goes into the software repository, and then we have still a quite complex process about packaging, then homologation, release management, until it ends up in a campaign, which is then triggering the deployment into the fleet. And this process still has a lot of manual approval process to do, which in my opinion, needs to be automated. And last but not least, the fourth point, build, buy, and compose. The idea is, I don't know, some of you may remember, we had in the 19th, there were keyboards where you had this compose key, which you could actually use to customize a combination of other keys to define a new character. Same idea here. Our message is, as I mentioned already earlier, I think we need to come to a model where we decide we use some standard modules, some standard elements for non-differentiating functions, and we combine them then with some development of differentiating functions and actually develop a solution, and an individual solution, a customer-specific solution based on this. But we need to learn to leverage existing standards and, I would say, building blocks. And with that, yeah, I mean, I mentioned this already. Obviously, this is where we would like to help, so I skip this. But let me summarize. So for us, I mean, there are 4 elements which we think are important, and I would love to get your perspective, and I hope that this actually can add some value to the discussion we will have during the day. But for us, these 4 aspects are: first, we need to implement a product perspective in terms, in contrast to, instead of a project philosophy. We have to make sure that we work on productivity in software development. We have to consider that we actually add the ops to DevOps. And last but not least, I think, and this is really something which I'm really struggling to understand why it does not happen so far, is we need to make sure that we actually leverage standards and existing investments into components in order to build our solutions. I'm convinced we will fail if we try to develop everything customer specific. If every car manufacturer is trying to develop its own platform, its own OS, I think this will not work. With that, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Oliver Bahns of T-Systems.